You see, these messages that you have written down are the very thoughts that make you feel not good enough. If we had a 3-year-old child here in the middle of the room, and each one of us started to yell at the child and tell it how no good it was and how stupid it was and it shouldn't do this and it should do that and how dare it make a mistake and look at the mess it made, and maybe we hit that child a few times, what are we going to have? We're going to have a little child that cowers in the corner and behaves like a goody-goody, or we're going to have a child that tears up the room. They will go one of two ways, but there is no way we're ever going to know the potential of this child. However, if we take that same little child and we tell it how wonderful it is and how much we love it and how beautiful it is and that we just love the way it does things and we think it's so creative and that it's okay for this child to make mistakes while it learns, then the potential that can come out of this child will blow your mind. Now, each one of us is always working with the 3-year-old child within us. And most of us, unfortunately, spend our time yelling at the child, and then we wonder why our lives don't work. Maybe you were mistreated as a child. Maybe you were treated very badly, and that's sad. But if you're mistreating yourself in the here and now, then this is sadder still. So you have quite a list of negative messages now. Let's look at this list. Does this list go with your other list of what's wrong with you? And maybe even with your should list? I have a feeling it does. Our life scripts are based on our early messages. And until we can find those messages, we can't change our lives. But remember, all that is finished. It's over. It's in the past. And if we just go into blame, then we stay victim. And that's no fun. And you get to stay stuck in your problem. Blame keeps the problem. It keeps us stuck in the problem. And understanding lets us rise above it. The past cannot be changed. And the future is shaped by our current thinking. Our freedom in the here and now depends on our understanding our parents, having understanding and compassion for them instead of just blame. We want to know that, like us, they were doing the best they could at that point in time and space with the understanding and awareness and knowledge that they had. Blame is not taking responsibility for ourselves and our own creative power. You see, they were just as frightened and scared as we are, and they could only teach us what they had been taught. What do you know about your parents' childhood before the age of 10? Think about it for a while. How much do you know? And if you don't know much and your parents are still alive, try to find out. Not in an accusing way, but just ask them, what was it like to be a little child? What was it like when you were 5 years old? And if your parents are gone and you can't find out from then let yourself imagine what it could be like. What kind of a childhood would your parents have had to have them be the sort of people they were when you were little? Understanding creates compassion. You see, you can't free yourself until you free them, and you can't forgive yourself until you forgive them. Now, perhaps you also have brothers or sisters. If they are older, they may have been like gods to you, and you may have taken very seriously the things that they said. Sometimes they may have considered you a nuisance, and you got the idea you weren't good enough. Teachers often say things that shape our lives. I remember when I was in the 5th grade, and the teacher called me up and said, "What do you want to do in life?" And I said, "Oh, I want to be a dancer." And she said to me, "Oh, let's leave that to the shorter girls. Tall girls can't dance." And I thought, oh dear. And I put away all my dancing aspirations in my pocket and literally didn't take them out till I was well over 40. School also creates so many interesting beliefs. For instance, if we think about tests and grades, were you really aware as a child that the tests you took and the grades you were getting had nothing to do with your self-worth, that they were showing you only how much you knew about a particular subject, and that's all. And most of us go through life reacting to the fear that we had as children when we had to take a test. We thought it had to do with whether we were good enough or not. When you were a child, your friends were just as mixed up as you were and had their own misinformation and may have taught you much nonsense, or they may have said things that were very cruel. You had neighbors. What did the neighbors say? What did they think? Were you afraid of them? Were they friends? Then you think of the ads on TV and in the magazines. How did they shape how you feel about yourself? There are so many products that are sold on the basis of trying to teach you that you're not good enough or acceptable enough unless you use their product. Do you buy into that? Or do you see their game? See, our old messages of limitations come from many places. And it always comes down to, where did we get the messages that we're not good enough? And then, of course, the next thing is how to transcend our limitations, no matter what they told us. See, it doesn't matter what other people say about us. It's how we react to it and what we're choosing to believe about ourselves. You know, Gerald Jampolsky has written a couple of wonderful books. In Teach Only Love, he said something I thought was brilliant. He said, if you want to increase your spiritual growth as quickly as possible, or if you want to get out of a problem as quickly as possible, choose to think only happy thoughts. You see, you can only think one thing at a time. You can spend your time thinking about joyous experiences, you can love yourself, or you can spend your time doing what I call griping and grunging, thinking about the past and all the failures and all the things that went wrong and how you're not good enough and how things may go wrong in the future is a sure way to continue to have failures. But that's not the way to create a wonderful life. Loving yourself and thinking joyful, happy thoughts is the quickest route you can take. So the next question is, now that we've looked at all these things, now that we have this list of all the things that are wrong with us and the list of all the things our parents said were wrong with us, and the neighbors and the friends and the church and the authority figures, the next question is it true? Look at your list. What do you still believe is true for you? Is it really true? And the answer to me is both yes and no. All these negative things are true if you believe them about yourself. And they're not true if you don't believe them. And you can tell what you believe just by looking at your experiences. If you have a lack of finances or you really can't get your money act together, then there must be a belief within you of burdens and debts. If you're a lonely person, then there must be a belief in there that says, nobody loves me, or I'm unlovable. If you're ill a lot, then you must have crippling thoughts of some sort. You may not consciously be aware of these thoughts, but if you look to your circumstances, you can begin to see what kind of thoughts you must have. So think of all the things in your life that are not working, because that's what we're concentrating on now. This is what we want to change. And ask yourself, what kind of thoughts could be creating these conditions? Could they be some of the things on your list? Some of the beliefs that we have are very positive and nourishing, and we want to keep those beliefs. We want to use them often because they work for us. And some of the things we believe are no longer appropriate. And some of the things we believe were never true. They were someone else's fears. All those things on your list were other people's opinions. So the question you have to ask yourself is it true? And you'll get the answer by looking around you at your circumstances. You see, our circumstances always show us what we believe. I remember once when I was a little girl in school, and this memory is so vivid for me because it's so typical of my beliefs about myself at the time. I remember that we had a party in school, and it was a gala affair, and everybody brought a lot of party stuff and things like that. And there was lots of cake, and there was so much cake that when the teacher was cutting it, several children got several pieces of cake. And yet, when it was my turn and I came up for a piece of cake, and of course with my belief system, I was last, there was no cake left. And all the children who had cake all the time and who believed that it was their right to have cake were having lots of cake. And I, who never had cake and believed that I was not good enough and did not deserve any, there wasn't one piece left for me. It's a perfect example of how we create our circumstances by our beliefs.